And a very good morning, all. Welcome to the Saturday preview with myself, David Massey, coming to you on a Friday morning at around about 11:30. An early one this morning because I'm going to be away to Southall races. I'm going to be working there later on tonight, and then first thing in the morning we're setting off. Myself and the good lady, we're heading down to Sandown, and then we're staying over down south, and then Plumpton on Sunday for a bit of a. So it's a bit of a racing weekend coming up. Hopefully, I'll be able to provide you with some pointers from those two meetings when we get back next week. Also, I've got a fairly quiet January ahead of me in terms of work, so I'm going to be sitting down now and really getting stuck into some of the anti-post Cheltenham stuff. There's one or two. I've already had one or two small anti-post bets, which I'll tell you about next week. The price on them won't be going. Don't worry about that. It's not like I need to tell you about them right now. They're big prices. So I've had a couple of anti-posts, and I will be having some more anti-post bets next week once I start looking at a few more races. And from here to sort of March, I'll be periodically putting another one up when we get a bit of time. So that's the plan anyway for the next couple of weeks. As far as tomorrow goes, lack of runners really at Sandown tomorrow, which you sort of knew was coming from the entries. That's not to say it's not an interesting card. It is, but in terms of finding value now, I don't think there's as much as there normally would be on a Saturday. There's normally 5 or 6 races you can get stuck into, and you'll find something. I think there's probably 2 races at Sandown, maybe one at Wincanton, but even I'm not mad keen on that, to be perfectly honest. I'll probably just stick to Sandown tomorrow, and there's only going to be 2 or 3 bets, I think, on the punt in the morning. Let's have a look at the card. The TV races mainly, I suppose, are the interesting ones. There's some interest early in the juvenile race, but there's no bet there for me at the moment. And similarly, in this first race at Sundown, the 2 mile handicap chase, I don't think there's a bet here. I think the early market's come out. He's probably got it about right. Chances are one of John BB or Locker in Talk is the most likely winner. Both of them come into this off the back of wins. And John BB in particular was quite impressive when he beat Paddy's Poem here last time out. He's gone up £6 for that. But again, as punt readers know, I've been banging on about Paddy's Poem for the best part of about 18 months. A really nice horse, and he's finally starting to come good. So the fact that he's beaten him easily, I have to rate that as decent form, and £6 rise looks entirely fair. My only worry with taking 9 to 4 about him would be you're backing one of Tom Lacey's to back one up, and it's never. Tom Lacey's never a trainer. He's a good trainer, don't get me wrong, very good trainer, but I sort of balk at backing his at short prices to follow up. It's not always the case that they run just as well second time as they did the time before. I'm finding it hard to look outside of those two, to be honest. Delir Destraval, I think, probably will need another run. Darabin was behind John BB at Sandown. Don't see why he should reverse the form. Finnegan's Garden, he's not really this great, and he's out the handicapping. Unless it was money for American Tom, which would make him moderately interesting. First run for Milton Bradley. Jack Tudor on board, taking 7 off. Unless there was money for American Tom after a long absence, then I would suggest he probably needs it as well. The Tolworth's open. It's wide open. That's not so I can find a bet in the race, but I'm finding it hard to sort of knock any of the 7 out of it. I think you can make strong cases for, well, certainly a case for almost everything in the race. I do like Hang In there, I think. 9 to 4, 5 to 2 is probably about the right sort of price for him. But he's one of these. He reminds me weirdly of Somerville Boy a little bit, who won the race, obviously, 3 years ago now? 2 years? I don't know. Last decade, anyway, it was. So he reminds me very much of him in that we saw him run at Exeter. We were there that day at Exeter, myself and the good lady, and he really did take a hold in the paddock, and he played up like nothing. And you thought, well, he's going to run himself into the ground here. You can see what's coming a mile off. And all he did was just sort of went from the front, dictated the race, and ran away from him at the end. And the form of it's decent. And then he was better again at Cheltenham. He settled a bit better in the paddock, but he still was sort of 3 lengths too good for Pacify. He's going the right way, and he's learning to race, and he's learning to settle in very much the same way as Somerville Boy did when he took this. It will be interesting to see how he behaves in the paddock tomorrow. If you've got pictures, keep an eye on him in the paddock, is what I would say. I would say not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily have to be behaving himself, given what we've seen so far. In fact, you'd sort of worry a little bit if he was, head down, sort of looking half asleep. But he's clearly got a lot of talent hanging there, and if he wins this and wins it well, I think he becomes a player at Cheltenham. But as I say, you can make a case for plenty of these. Even Logan Rocks at 33. You couldn't. I was standing that day at Huntingdon. I was working for a bookmaker. You couldn't get him off that at Huntingdon. There was good money for him that day. They knew they had a good horse, and I don't think Doncaster really suited him last time. You can even make a case for that at 33. He's taking a big step forward. Silver Hallmark won with his head in his chest at Chepstow. Very, very impressive. And the Rockers are having a great season. Virgil O'Brien's having a good season. He could easily take a step forward. Son of Camas was impressive at Newbury, and I rate that form. It's one of those races. It's just, you can make a case for everything. I don't think there's a bet in the race at the moment at the prices, but that's, as I say, that might change when I go tomorrow and we have a look at them in the bag. We'll see. However, there are bets in the last two races. The 3 o'clock, the veterans. There are one or two obvious ones. King's Odyssey, obviously, towards the sort of front of the market. Top weight, mark of 144. He's gone up 5 for beating Smooth Stepper half a length at Warwick last time, and you can argue a case that the revised weight that Smooth Stepper could reverse that form. But I think King's Odyssey will probably confirm it. I think there's arguably, I know you sort of say, how can you say there's more to come with an 11-year-old? But suffice to say, he's pretty lightly raced. King's Odyssey. I think this will only be about his 7th. What is it? 70. He's had a few more runs than I thought. This will actually be his 18th start. I thought he had about 10 runs over fences, actually, King's Odyssey. So he's had a few more than I thought. But nevertheless, I think he's got to have he's got to have a leading chance in this, you would imagine. Plenty of these we know about. Burton's Well, form of the Venetia Williams yard, just starting to fall away a little bit. Only one issue he's had in the past sort of week or so has been in a match up at Haydock, and a few other short price favourites have been beaten. Just keep an eye on the form of the yard, is what I would say. And with that, I'm against Burton's Well tomorrow, although I think, again, he's another sort of lightly raced 11-year-old, as it were, that's probably got a bit more left in him, probably another race or two left in him. You can argue a case for Theatre Guide, I suppose, but he was second in the race last year off 137. He's 137 again this time around. But we know exactly where you are with him. There's a couple of weak finishes in here. I'm not mad keen on Wild West Wind. I think whatever trip he seems to run out, he seems to finish weekly. Japek, something's putting me off Japek, and I don't really know what it is. Whether I've sort of got it in my head that he might not quite be this grade, which is a daft thing to say because he didn't get beaten far at Carlisle back in March in a Class 2 race, but I didn't see that as a Class 2 race. There's something just putting me off Japek. The one I'm going to go for each way here is On Tour. Evan Williams and Richard Johnson in the saddle. I'll come to Richard Johnson in a minute riding for Evan Williams because it's not quite as good as I thought it might be. What is interesting with On Tour, the two interesting things, the three interesting things, sound like Monty Python now, the three interesting things with On Tour. Third in this race last year, got beat 20 lengths off a mark of 135. He's off 128 this time around, so £7 lower. He jumped awfully last year. He can't jump that badly again, surely. I mean, he's jumping last year. He was slow at a few, he got into a few, and he was still a long way back, 4 out. It was only really over the last sort of two fences he hit top gear and came home with a rattle to finish third. He really did come home with a rattle as well. So if he can jump a bit better, Mitch Bastian was on him last year. Richard Johnson this year, you'd have to say that's going to be a plus. I've had a look at Richard Johnson for Evan Williams. Only 1 from 20 for the yard, but another 8 placed. So it's not a case of you've got no chance with it. It's just, when they put Richard Johnson on one, clearly that, it is expected to go quite well. And I think what's the two things, as I say, most interestingly, he's had a break On Tour. He has to have a break. I think he needs at least 6 weeks between his races. He's been off for 70 days since he was behind Burton's Well, and they made him favourite that day. But that came off the back of a quick run at Chepstow. Now, the Chepstow run was really good. He was only a neck behind Violin Rouge that day. He had a couple of winners in behind him as well. If you concentrate on that piece of form, there's only a pound higher here, because I think that's the piece of form to concentrate on. He looks well handicapped. The ground won't be a problem. We know the trip's not a problem for him. And they put a visor on first time as well. Now, I've spoken to my good friend Mr. Delagi this morning, asked him to have a look using his wonderful Proform equipment at Evan Williams' first time advisor. It used to be the case a few years ago that first time headgear with Evan Williams was a fairly solid system. Now in the last couple of years he hasn't had a winner in first time headgear. However, last year he did have 4 in first time headgear that were all placed at big prices. So it's not as bad as it looks. It's not a case of, oh, well, it's 0 from 8, that's it. 4 of them got placed at big prices, first time out in headgear. So with all that, I think the bottom line is, I think On Tour represents a decent each way bet. Somebody's going to be going 4 places on this. You can absolutely guarantee it. I think that represents value. If we can get 12, 14 to 1 4 places, I'm more than happy to take a chance with that. I think that's a bet. 335, handicap hurdle. Again, you can make cases out for plenty. I'm delighted to see Remy Look back. I do like Remy Look. He probably will lead the run, I think, tomorrow. And whereas I was sort of quite keen on him at 40 to 150 to 1 at Ascot, it's going to be about a 14, 16 to 1 chance tomorrow. And unless I get there and he's bang fit in the paddock, which I don't really expect, then I'll probably leave him. You've got Totterdown in here, so you know what's going to happen. We know we're going to get a good pace. But Totterdown has been put up £12 for that win here in November. That takes him to a mark of 142. Well, he couldn't win this time last year off 138, 139. Can he win off 142? Look, maybe these are his conditions, but I wouldn't be betting him at 4 to 1. I definitely wouldn't be betting him at 4 to 1. Happy to leave that alone. Ain't Chia's quite interesting, coming back off a long absence after injury. I mean, really ought to be 2 from 2 at Sandown. Won a novice hurdle here back in end of 2017. Beat What's Wrong With You that day, and then fell at the last when would have beaten Countista in the February of 2018, and we haven't seen him since. He's got the potential to be better than a handicapper, I think. But again, it's going to be a case of having a look at him in the paddock tomorrow and seeing how fit we are with Ain't Chia. And again, Colin Tizard again, another yard that's a little bit, they're having the odd winner, but, you know, they're not exactly firing him in. So I think the piece of form to concentrate on is the race here from early December where Mac the Man won, beat Protectorat. Now, we've seen Protectorat come out in the week and win, in inverted commas, at Cheltenham before the stewards somehow decided that should be thrown out. I have no idea how, but there you go. But I rate that piece of form because I rate Mac the Man and I rate Protectorat, so I think that piece of form should work out well. Now, 4th in there was Smarty Wild, who was made favourite. He's quite unexposed, had been dropped £1 for that. Can't argue his chance. 5th in the race was Ruacana. I think he's probably at the top end of his mark at the moment. He won a couple at Lingfield and the handicapper put him up. I think he's probably at the top end of his mark. But back in 6th, interestingly, was Distingo. Now, again, those of you with long memories will know I was quite keen on Distingo as a novice hurdler. Really nice looking horse, gorgeous looking horse, and had plenty of potential. Now, we've not seen him in that since February, and then he came out, as I say, and finished 6th. And he was a 50 to 1 chance that day. So not a lot was expected of Distingo, and it was it looked very much a sort of getting fit run to me. He was held up at the back, made some late ground up, got beaten 11 lengths. So he's only got about 4 lengths to find with Smarty Wild on that form. And the handicapper's dropped him a couple of pounds. He looks well handicapped now. The ground won't be a problem. Soft, heavy ground is no issue to him. And I think he's got the potential to take the biggest step forward of those 3 horses that I just mentioned and do better again. I think a mark of 130 is probably still well below what he's capable of. I think the key to Distingo might be catching him early each season, because maybe it's a case of, you know, you're all right for 2 or 3 runs with him and then his form tends to sort of fall away a little bit. So with that, I can see Distingo going well tomorrow. I think he's been putting on 1 or 2 of the early shows at 16 to 1. We might even get a little bit bigger than that because there are others that come in here with considerably better chances on the figures. But I do like Distingo and I can see him going well. I think he's got a good chance. So there we go. I think we'll leave it at that for the time being. If there is anything else that I come up, I'll put it on the Twitter feed. But for the time being, I think, as I say, might just be a couple of bets tomorrow. Maybe just the 2 and a small each way, double the pair. And let's see if we can get the new year off to a good start. We were a bit unlucky last Saturday, really, with Howling Milan. probably would have won, and Indy 5 would have hit the frame as well. Just one of those horrendous Saturdays where the last fence caught us out twice, I'm afraid. Let's hoping it doesn't do that again tomorrow. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll be back next week, as I say, with plenty to catch up on. Have a good weekend.